This segment of the forum is the candidates for Benton County Assessor. Neither of them is the incumbent. They're both new to it, and I'd like to introduce them, Mary Phillips and Bill Spencer. Welcome. We will begin with opening statements, and I did the birthday thing correctly, I believe. So, Mr. Spencer, we will begin with your opening statement first for the open.
I'm Bill Spencer. I'm running for Benton County Assessor. I'm deep-rooted in this community. I grew up here. I grew up here in Richland. I currently live here in Richland with my wife and 6 kids. I have continually served this community from the time I was just a little Boy Scout up to now. I served the City of Richland on the Housing Community Development Committee, served in Boy Scouts as a leader, Cub Scouts as a leader, TCYSA and Three Rivers Soccer Clubs, the Leahona Children's Foundation. I serve as a Benton County PCO currently. I'm an Eagle Scout and I continually serve in my church. People ask me, why do I want to be the county assessor? Plain and simple, it's to serve my community that I love. People also ask, well, what does an assessor do? The function of the assessor, it's not a position that creates policy. However, it is an extremely important position. It sets the value of your property that determines the tax burden that's placed upon it. So basically, we appraise your home to determine how much property taxes that you will be paying. Now, the county assessor, people often don't really care too much until they see that change of value notice in their mailbox. And then all of a sudden, hey, who's this county assessor and why is my property valued this? Now, when they come down and they want to talk to the assessor, they want to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about and not just another government bureaucrat who has just decided to run this office. And why is the assessor elected position? The assessor's there to be an advocate for you, the people, a bridge gap between the county government and us, the taxpayer. My experience, for 13 years, I've been a local appraiser. I own my own local appraisal business, and I have also had the opportunity to work in the Franklin County Assessor's Office. I have the unique advantage of being able to work both privately and publicly in this field. I have also worked closely with 5 other counties, especially their assessor's office, as I've gone through my professional process. And again, I'm Bill Spencer, running for Benton County Assessor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Phillips.
My name is Mary Phillips, candidate for Benton County Assessor. First of all, I'd like to express my thanks to the League of Women Voters for the invitation to speak this evening. And I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for joining us. I appreciate the opportunity to share my qualifications and goals. I'm a longtime resident of Benton County, mother of 3, grandmother of 1, and married to an amazing man who teaches public school in the Lower Valley. I'm actively involved in our local community as a member of Prosser Rotary and as a member of the Tri-Cities Republican Women, and as president of a group of local technology professionals. With nearly 16 years in county administration and 20 years as a technology professional, I have the skills, vision, and leadership abilities necessary to bring to this office a renewed sense of purpose with an emphasis on service, transparency, consistency, modern methodology, and the efficient use of county resources. I have a well-rounded education background, including a Master of Science in Resource Management, which provided me with the valuable technical, managerial, ethical, and legal framework upon which I've built my career. It has been my great pleasure to serve as Benton County's Geographic Information Systems, or GIS manager, for the past 13 and a half years. During that time, I've taken the county's GIS from what essentially amounted to a money pit, where a lot of resources went in, but not a lot of benefit came out, to a full-service department with a staff trained in the latest software and methodology. Through the years, I've gained considerable experience in department administration, budgeting, project management, public records, management and contract administration. I've built a department with a reputation for innovation and outstanding customer service. And I have consistently ensured that my department operates as effectively as possible within a no-frills budget. It has always been my goal to provide our customers with maximum service while maintaining a minimal budget. And in the coming years, I will continue to focus upon increased efficiencies while striving to implement transparent, technology-forward business practices. As a department manager, I've built strong cooperative relationships with other Benton County departments, including the Assessor's Office, with elected officials, and with diverse government agencies. And I believe strongly that we, as employees of Benton County and as members of the community, need to work together as a team in order to make the most of the resources available to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you guys were prolific. You sent in a dozen questions here, all similar to what we had prepared also. So I'm going to begin with what it looks like here is the overall question between the two of you. And I'm going to start with Mrs. Phillips. You'll be first on this. And here's the question. Given that the assessor's office, and let me say, you both sort of addressed this in your opening statements, but maybe you can be a little more specific. Given that the assessor's office is a relatively large governmental department responsible for appraising property, which skill set do you think is most critical? In the field appraisal experience, or experience in the operation of a governmental agency and personnel?
Okay. Well, I think for I believe for a department of that size with such a large staff, and currently there are 20, I think there's 25, there were 26 and someone recently retired. You need somebody who's a strong leader and an administrator, someone who has experience in managing within a government and county setting. And as far as the appraisal is an important aspect. There are also a number of other functions within that office. I have the organizational chart for the assessor's office, and currently 13 of those staff are involved in appraisal, and the other 12 are involved in other activities, some of which support those activities and some of which support segregations, levies, mobile homes. There's a whole nother list of functions. And the critical thing that office needs is an administrator to run the functions in that office. And the staff and the different components, the different portions of that office are accredited, are qualified. And a manager needs to be able to trust their staff to do their job. And I trust the staff of that office. There's good people in there. And do we need to get more training? Do we need to are there areas to move forward? Sure. But I think the strongest part, or the most important part of a manager, is to manage your team as a team, to work together, to move forward together, and to trust that they're going to do their job.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer.
This is a great question, because I don't really feel that either one is over the other. Number one, you got to look at the function of the office. The function of the office is appraisal, to set values. And currently here in Benton County, we have $16 billion worth of property values. That's a big task for someone who doesn't know appraisal. However, does it just take an in-the-field appraiser to run the office? No. It needs somebody who also has management experience, experience managing appraisers and other support staff. I currently have a small business. I have 2 appraisers, a trainee, I've trained many appraisers, and 3 support staff. Now that's a lot of management experience for a local small appraisal firm. My opponent, she manages 2 people in a GIS mapping software type field. This in no way is the public administration that is needed for an office of the size that the current assessing office has. Now remember, it's important to be a manager. You have to know what those who are in order to manage people correctly, you have to know what they are doing. So if I'm managing appraisers, I have to know at least a little bit about appraisal work.
Thank you. Okay, I tried to divide these up between the various questions. I'm going to ask this one next. Mr. Spencer, you'll be first. What are your plans to improve efficiencies and service levels in the assessor's office?
Improving efficiencies is deeply important to any government agency, and especially is important in a private business. I have great experience providing those efficiencies in my small business, taking it from where it was when I took over to where it is now. Now, with an assessor's office, those efficiencies come in things like the software and field work that the staff performs. Because with those efficiencies, it creates less cost to you, the taxpayer. Another thing to provide efficiencies for the office is better training. Training of not only the appraisal staff, but even more importantly, the clerical staff, who need training, more training. They're a great staff on how to deal with public, how to deal with that angry taxpayer who comes in and says, you guys are way off here, fix this, because I'm right. Well, how are you going to deal with that? Our staff needs to know how to handle that taxpayer, because I worked in the assessor's office, and more often than not, there's a lot of angry people that come down there.
Thank you. Mrs. Phillips.
Okay, actually, this ties into a few of my goals that I put together. As far as efficiencies, one of the methodologies that I really, I think really will lend itself well to moving forward in more efficient fashion in the assessor's office is instituting first, developing a strategic plan for the entire department, and working with the employees to help get their input on what they see and how they see themselves as a part of the department and the county as a whole, so getting their input. And one of the things I really want to promote is instituting lean management practices. This is something that's increasingly becoming a focus it started in other industries, but now is moving forward in government more and more. And the emphasis in lean management is reducing waste while providing the same or enhanced value to the customer. So you look at the processes in each of the various departments or the various activities that occur in the department, and you look at the processes, you break them down with your staff working together, and you look at the steps that go in and what can be eliminated, what can be improved as far as time, as far as materials. So that's one of the things that I strongly support. And also for increasing efficiencies in the office, I really support the Benton County Commissioner's footprint reduction goal, and I think that will go a long ways towards improving efficiencies in that office as well.
Thank you. There's also several questions to do with customer service, that type of thing, better communication with the public. If you are elected, and Mrs. Phillips, she'll go first. If you are elected, are there any particular changes you would like to make that would make the assessor's office more user-friendly, to develop better communications with the public? And how do you do the customer service when the taxpayers have real property value questions? So this is more dealing with the public
service, yes,
than efficiencies in the office.
Okay, actually, some of my goals tie into better communication with the public. I really think this is incredibly important, and that's one of the things that I always emphasize in my office is really listening and making sure you understand what your customers need or want. And one of the things that I think is should be a strong focus in the office. And part of the goals that I have developed for better communication with the public includes, for one thing, an implementation of a social media platform. This is increasingly important, and the auditors have implemented one, and it's been very successful. Twitter, Facebook. It's just different ways of getting information out to different people, because different people access information in different manners. One of the things that I want to promote is a more robust website, and I've looked at different counties and their websites. King County and Pierce County have YouTube videos with just little bits of information where they provide important information on key concepts or processes or procedures that people need to know to better understand how to deal with that office. Also, I think that they need to make more commonly requested information available for download. And that's something that my office has done. We make information available for free for the public to download. There's a lot of different ways to improve communication besides being better listeners, which I think is important. Another example before my time runs out, Pierce County has a live chat option, which they have available during working hours. And some younger people are comfortable with that. Instead of talking on the phone, it's just listening to your customers and knowing what they need.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer.
There are a number of different ways to improve communication, and more specifically, I think we need to focus in on what the assessor's office is. We set value that determines your taxes. So one of the things that we started to implement in Franklin County is when we would change values in a certain area and we saw a significant increase, we'd hold a town hall meeting saying, okay, here is why we're doing what we're doing. Providing an opportunity for people to come and ask us those questions in a forum setting. Now, it's also important for them to know that they are always open and we're always accessible to any comments, concerns, anything that they have dealing with what the assessor's office has to deal with. Now, another way is through the website. I've dealt with, I don't know how many different county assessors' websites. One in particular that I just loved had key documents, key sales information, all pertinent information to what the public needs, what real estate agents need, what appraisers need, professionals, insurance agents, what they constantly ask for, up and available to them on the website. Now, these services need to be made accessible to the public.
Thank you. Okay, this is one from the audience. It's a little more specific. How are individual properties assessed, and how come during the housing bubble burst and houses being repossessed, our property values were assessed as going up and not down? Obviously, neither of you were the assessor, but do you have any insight on that? You would be first.
Okay. First of all, properties are assessed in a more wide scale, and they don't personally assess each and every individual property like I would as a private appraiser. They do what's called a mass appraisal scale. And this is talking residentially. And so basically we get the key characteristics of the homes, the quality, condition, bedroom, bathroom count, that type of thing, and put it into a system, basically put certain adjustments on those and do it in a mass scale. So your living improvements plus whatever your land is worth. So that's basic. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it. And then why did their home go up in assessed value? I don't know. I wasn't the assessor at the time. Even though the bubble did burst in other areas, residentially, it didn't burst here. Now, there are properties here in the area that did go down during that time. However, not all. So I'd have to take a look at your property value and why it did what it did and help you figure that out. And that's a great question to come in, ask our appraisers or the assessor to clarify exactly what went on.
Mrs. Phillips?
Again, And I have to say, too, not knowing the specifics of the property, it's
Sure.
difficult to answer. And that is something that anyone who has questions about their particular values really should go in and talk to the individual appraiser that worked on their property, because they would have all the details about that specific property. Now, a lot of things do tie in, and I don't know how much more I can add, because this, I mean, that is, there's market values for the entire market. There's a reflection of what's going on in Benton County in general. There are reflections of specific neighborhoods, because if sales occur in specific neighborhoods, that's going to impact values in that specific neighborhood. So some of it is an overall reflection of the market in the county or the area as a whole. Some of it is neighborhood specific, and some of it is specific to the property. So there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of different information that the appraisers use to determine those. And sometimes there's lags where, a property may be in an area where the values have been consistently high and things may start to drop, but there's a lag in when the reappraisals occur. So there's a lot of things that go into it that can factor into an individual appraisal.
Thank you. I think I've covered the broadest part of these audience questions. I'll ask this one with Mrs. Phillips, you going first. And I think you did answer this to some extent already. I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but what experience do you have with budgeting and management, and what is your philosophy and experience with managing a professional staff?
Well, my experience, and I do only have 2 staff. I don't apologize for that. I have 2 people in my office who I have managed for a very long time. I started off with no employees in a department where there was just me. So, as far as that goes, I have expanded my staff considerably. I have managed the 2 individuals for a very long time. I also work very closely with other departments and the staff, and training them and working with staff in other departments on their methodology and their analysis of data, that sort of thing. So that I have a lot of experience not only working with my staff, but with the staff of other offices. I've built the budget for my office, and that is an accounting structure, which is different than a private structure. I've built my own budget for 13 years since I started there, and that can be very complicated, sometimes more than others. I have a small department, so that is less complicated than an office the size of the assessor's office. But I have managed to always work with a very lean budget. I'm very careful, and I did emphasize that. I'm very careful. I don't ask for money that we don't need, and when we have money left over, I make sure it goes back. I am always very frugal with budgeting.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer?
Budgeting is an interesting thing. Being a small business owner, budgeting is essential, because if I don't budget correctly with my employees, then my business goes under, and they're out of a job, I'm out of a job. So yes, I do have budgeting experience within a small business window. I was led in on the process when I worked at the Franklin County Assessor's Office. I obviously didn't set the budget. I wasn't the assessor over there. I've also taken many courses through college and other things in business administration through budgeting and stuff like that. My managerial philosophy is, if my staff is trained correctly, the stuff that comes out is going to be good stuff. So basically, my appraisal staff, if they know what they're doing as they're in the field, the property values that come out of our office will be good. And people may be angry at the values, they may be happy with the values. You can't really go anywhere with that. But at least we'll know that our processes are true and correct. And the better we get trained in those type of processes, whether it be through appraisal or through the clerical staff, the better and more efficient we will be as an office.
Thank you. And this will be our last question, and Mr. Spencer, you will go first. And again, we may have touched on this. Do you believe there is a need to improve the process through which property owners can appeal their valuations? And if so, how would you make those improvements?
No, I'm trying to understand if that's going to be a specific question to Benton County or just in general. What do you think?
Is it going to be different
If
in Benton
possibly,
County,
yeah.
somewhere else? Well, why don't you answer it for Benton County?
Benton County? Okay. Currently, the process in Benton County is the same as it is throughout the Washington state. However, in Benton County, there needs to be better communication between the taxpayer and the assessor's office. Now, I personally haven't challenged my value, so I haven't gone through the process personally myself. However, as part of my business, I help others in the appeals process. I've been through the process with them. I've also been through the process on the other side when I worked for Franklin County, so I have this unique vision of both sides. And you know, it's interesting how each side looks at each other. But the process needs to be open communication between the assessor's office, the appraisers, the assessor, and the taxpayer. And eventually, if it gets that far, with the Board of Equalization. And the Board of Equalization needs to know exactly what's going on in these Board of Equalization hearings. And one of the biggest complaints I get so far is that the board really isn't understanding either the taxpayer or the assessor's position. I've seen and heard both ways. And I think the Board of Equalization needs to be trained on the whole process a little bit better as well. So there's always more work to do, always more improvements to make.
Thank you. Mrs. Phillips.
Well, I have to agree on the communication part. I think that's a huge issue, and it's very important. I think a critical part of the process is at the onset. I mean, before it ever starts, before it ever reaches the point where you're at the Board of Equalization, I've talked to a lot of people who don't. Sure, your notice tells you that if you don't agree, you can go to the Board of Equalization and go through these options. But a lot of people I've talked to really don't have a clear understanding of the exact steps involved. And if you go to the website, and again, that's one of the things that I really promote is a more robust and more user-friendly website. It has a link to the Department of Revenue's information on how to do that and to do a appeal and to go through that process. But I think there needs to be a really concise, easily digestible sequence of steps that people can look at and see, okay, these are my options. This is exactly what the steps are required to go through this. And there's a lot of things you could do before you get to that process. And people need to understand exactly what their options are all the way through the process in a very easily, as I said, a very easily digestible fashion. And that's some of the other counties I've looked at. A little video that just can explain people, these are the steps you can do, these are your options, very clear, very concise, very user-friendly.
Thank you. And we'll now move to closing statements. And Mrs. Phillips, would you please go first?
Okay. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'd like to close by emphasizing that for more than 13 and a half years, I've worked side by side with the staff of the Assessor's Office, training them in the use of our GIS software and helping them to analyze and improve the integrity of their data. And working so closely with this office has given me the unique advantage of being almost on the inside while still allowing me to have enough of an outside perspective to see which functions and services can be enhanced or updated. When an office has been under the same leadership for a very long time, as this one has, procedures tend to solidify, and having a fresh outlook can help get things moving forward again. It's time to bring new leadership and vision to the Benton County Assessor's Office, and I'm prepared to meet this challenge. I possess the right combination of experience, education, skills, and vision, along with a proven reputation as a respected, effective, and fiscally responsible leader. As your next assessor, I will continue to build upon the positive relationships I've developed within Benton County government and within the community in order to foster an environment of efficiency, collaboration, and service. Thank you. I appreciate your support and your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer.
Thank you again for coming out here and listening to us as we run for the office of Benton County Assessor. Oftentimes, people just don't look at why they need to vote for the Benton County Assessor. But hopefully this year, enough emphasis has been placed on this race to show the importance of truly understanding what the assessor does and why we should find either myself or Mrs. Phillips to be our next Benton County Assessor. Now, the Department of Revenue describes the job of assessor as valuing your properties so that there's a fair and equitable value placed upon you and me. So it's important to know that the assessor needs the experience necessary to make the decisions to handle the $6 billion worth of property here in Benton County. And not only that, we have a lot of big projects coming up with Vista Field, with Columbia Drive. All these things, the assessor's gonna have to be there to consult with, to be able to know what's gonna go on with these properties and how we are gonna be valuing them and what the necessities to do with them are gonna be here in the county. I'm Bill Spencer. I'm running for Benton County Assessor. I am the only candidate who is truly qualified to run this office. And I, again, thank you for coming out. Please research me some more on my website, voteforbill.net, or on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank both of you for being here tonight. They are, again, the candidates running for Benton County Assessor, Mary Phillips and Bill Spencer.